Hi, I'm Ross Birkbeck. I'm a founder of Casedo and a practicing barrister. Welcome to this webinar. What I wanted to be showing you today is how you can use Casedo to do the sort of job, at least in my practice, I find myself doing all the time, which is looking at instructions from a client, looking at the documents you're sent through, and trying to figure out what's going on, how to look at the legislation in the context of those documents and vice versa, and the case law that might apply, etc., and bring all those things together to form an answer to the question you've been asked, whatever that may be. So broadly, an initial level of do we have a chance in this case? What should be the outcome here? We would see that sort of thing, which is often how, at least in my practice, cases start off. An example, not quite so much on the e-bundling side, but more on that sort of initial analysis point of view. So with that said, I'm going to jump into a screen share and show you how I work with Casedo at that stage in an instruction. So hopefully you can see that, Casedo in action. What you're looking at here is a previous hearing bundle, but I'm going to put that aside for now and start with the new case. So first thing to do is to create a new Casedo file for this matter, and that's as simple as going up to the file menu up here and choosing new case, and then choosing a place to save it. So I'm going to save this in my demos file and create a new file, and I'm going to call the same thing. But you can obviously call your Casedo file whatever you want and put it wherever you want. I would normally, obviously, for a new matter, create a folder with that matter name and put the documents in there. So here's my new Casedo file. And as you can see at the beginning, it's just empty. We've got our two view windows and our index and our desk space. So the first thing we're going to do is bring in our instructions. So if I click on the import file button, I'll be able to navigate to where I want to go. And if I go in here, I've got an email. So this is an email saved onto my system that I put there in a file, purportedly from my client, obviously. This isn't a real case. But if I select that email and import it, you'll see that it appears down here in the desk space in a second. Emails need to be unpacked a bit. And there we go. And you'll see this email is coming to Casedo as a folder, and that's because it's got some attachments attached to it. So if I click on the email itself, you'll see there's the email from me to me, asking me to take a look at the below. I might select that and highlight those text, and the chance of successfully appealing. So that's what I've got to look at. We may also be out of time, but this is what I've been asked to do. You can see how I can just select text in Casedo and highlight to pull out. Let's get rid of that. But what are the chances soon? And we may be out of time. 2 points raised in my instructions. Look at the below. Okay, we're looking for attachments. Well, those attachments have come through in this email, in this folder. So what Casedo does when you import an email into it is bring in the email as one folder document, and then the 4 attachments as well. So if we scroll down, we'll see those. And there are these 4 documents here. So obviously I want to look at them and figure out what they are, and I want to make sense of them. Before I do that, I'm just going to move this whole folder up here. The difference between the desk space and the index proper, as we call up here, is really procedural. You can do everything you can do to a document in the desk space. You can also do up to a document in the index and vice versa. But the idea is that new things appear in the desk space, so it's where your new materials appear, and then you can put them nicely up in order. Now I'm going to want to create a nice structured councils file up here that I'm going to want to come back to and move around at will. So my first step is always to I'm going to, this folder, that's fairly helpful. I could leave this title, but actually I'm going to rename that instructions, because I always like to have a folder at the top of my council bundle that has my instructions in it. Now let's look at this first document. What is it? It's a letter. So we could just start reading this, and in fact, that's probably what I would do. I would start reading it, and I would figure out what it is. But even as I do so, I'm going to want to give it a better name, because you can see it's a scan. It's been named with a silly number. So I'm going to date this, my naming convention, first 18, HMRC type. And as you will observe, I do tax, so I deal with a lot of revenue correspondence. And this is one example. And what we might again want to look at this and figure out this is a valid agreement of valid appeal. Now, what I'm doing here is dropping a bookmark on the page. I'm doing that not because it's a very long document and I need to put bookmarks in, but because if I do so, you'll see as soon as I do, I get this little subheading under the document over here, which tells me what this is all about. And then I might put another one there, you see counter arguments. I haven't named these when I spell them wrong. So I can now see at a flash that this is revenue's letter to my client, and what it's doing is laying out some counter arguments and notifying that they see the appeal. I would then probably read this, but I'm going to put it aside for one moment and move on because we might have something more immediate to look at first. And that's often how I tend to work when I do an initial pass where I just figure out what the documents are, and then I'll go through and do a more detailed legal analysis pass. So, for example, this one, 16th of August, 11, to HMRC. This is going the other way. So this is I can see here, look, a notice of appeal. It's also an application under 39(1)(a). So again, I'm going to highlight the relevant bits of text. There might be other things I want to highlight here, but I'm also going to do that same trick with dropping bookmarks on, because you hear the notice of appeal, it might be very procedurally important. In fact, in this case, it was particularly important when the notice of appeal was given by my client. So I'm going to drop that on there. I'm even going to now right-click it in this and give it a green bookmark because it's an important point that goes forward. So that's telling me what I do. And I'm going to also call this a Power 39(1) application. You don't need to worry about what that is unless you don't need to tax for your sins. Anyway, so there we go. Another letter. We now know what it is. We know what it's doing. And I might immediately just go, actually, I like to start at the top time-wise. I'm going to put this at the top. And see now, so, I'm starting to put my letters in order, but I want to, this is client correspondence with the revenue. This shouldn't be in my instructions folder, really. I'm going to create a new folder down there and call it correspondence. And I'm going to pop these documents in it. And they're now in the right order in their own folder. And in fact, if I look at these two, you can see how I'm using these tramline points to bring up different documents side by side in the two windows. So these documents are the same. You can see that. But if I look at these two, this one in the green window and this one in the purple window, I can see what they are. And so actually, I'm going to put those in my correspondence folder as well, because that's what they are. And you'll also notice how the way Casedo is working here. So as I rearrange these documents up in my index over here, they're put in order, but I can scroll through them one into the next. And as I do, you'll see my green highlight follows what I'm looking at. So at any moment, I know exactly which document it is I'm looking at any one time in which window, which is just key to that central Casedo usefulness, which is that you don't get lost and you always know what you're looking at and where things are. Anyway, back to the job at hand. This letter is 11th of July. Well, client HMRC. Let's pop that in position between the two. We just drag and drop it up there. I'm going to keep doing this provision of docs. Keep adding my little subtitles so I can see what's going on. Otherwise, probably not very interested in that letter at the moment. And then we'll go down to the last one here. And this is HMRC to client. The date is 30th June 15. And this actually is probably the key letter because this is the decision. So I'm going to put on here decision. And I'll also drop on here. Obviously, I know what these letters are. So a bit of here's one I made earlier about this, but this is the decision. And I'm going to give that a red label just as I did the green one, because again, I find that quite helpful when I'm scanning through a long list of correspondence. I want to know, well, I might even give it to these top letters, important letters that go for me or against me on various points. I might want to label green and red. So there we go. I've now so let's drag that into the right position so that everything's in time. And now I might want to go through and have a more thorough read of this, but I already broadly know what I'm dealing with and where things are, and I can compare the decision and the notice of appeal, for example. You'll be curious as to why we've got no decision after the notice of appeal. Well, you'll have to study some tax law if you want to understand that. Anyway, here we are. So our decision letter is probably the important one. So let's have a look at it in this window. And you'll see what it refers to is Section 45 of Finance Act 2003. So this is the particular piece of law we're looking at. Oh, you'll notice there, I'm looking at the same letter in both windows, which is a bit OTAs perhaps. But you'll see how when I added that highlight in one, it immediately pops up in the other. That's because really that's core to how Casedo works, which is in Casedo, you don't open up a document twice. All your documents are open all the time. And these two windows are just the way you look at them. So if you close a window, you can go down to a single window and then you get only one tram line here and you can jump around, etc. as you like. But if you want to open up another window, which you do in the bottom right, you just open up another view of the same document. So then you can scroll through it separately and do what you like. Anyway, back to the substance of our case. To try and, our job here, remember, is to get a grip on what we're trying to do. This is we're being referred here to Section 45(3)(b) of Finance Act 2003. So what we're going to need to look at that, and potentially also paragraph 5 of Schedule 10. Which you can do that different color if you want. And so next thing I would do is go and read that legislation and find out what it says. But I would certainly do that in Casedo, and you'll see why in a minute. Because so if I go to my import file button, as I say, we've got here the import file, add folder buttons. I can import a file, and in this case, this is a demo, so I've already got the law to hand. I've got the relevant bit of SDLT legislation, which is part 4. I think it's named wrong. Fix that. Name it right. And my first step, I always have a legislation folder, because I deal with a lot of legislation. And I'm going to pop that up there. And then I could also say, well, let's stay here. Let's find 45. What was it? 45(3)(b). Let's bring that up in the other window, and we'll see 45(3)(b) here. That's what we're looking for. And in fact, even before I do this, I'm going to do another thing. Even before I find that, I'm going to drop a cross-reference. So I've shown you this bookmarks tab in the bottom left, in the top left. I'm going to, in the top right, we've got the cross-reference tool. So I'm going to drop that on the page there. You'll see that adds one end of the link onto the page. And up here is the other end of the link, waits for me in this linked list in the top. If we added another one, you'll see you'll get 2. I'll delete that for now. But now we've just got one waiting. This is one end of the link, and that's the other. So if we now go to part 4 here of our legislation, where we're looking for 45, section 45, I'm going to search for 45. That's going to search our entire bundle. It's going to show me 32 results for 45. And if I click enter, I'll jump to the next one, which is, in this case, fortunately, section 45. So I'm going to copy and paste that into a bookmark. This is obviously a more conventional use of bookmarks than my subtitling that I was doing earlier, but no less a useful one. I had a bookmark, and I've now got in what is basically 150 pages of tax legislation here. You can see there's a lot of it, so much of it. But we don't want all this. Most of this is going to be irrelevant to what we're doing. But it's useful to have here in Casedo because I don't yet know quite which bits are going to be useful. So if I was working with paper, I wouldn't be printing out all of this. But in digital, I can. And moreover, once I've found one bit, I can just jump back to that bit whenever I want, section 45. Anyway, we're looking specifically for this, section 45(3)(b). So that's our key section. I could add another bookmark on there and maybe even indent it 3B. if I wanted to. I might bother. I might not. But anyway, now I found that, I'm going to close my link. Remember that link I added onto this page? I'm going to close it here and drop the, and that's now added a cross-reference between these two places. So if we navigate away and we go, okay, remember what was our decision? It was this one, and it's references 45.3b. Okay, here's my cross-reference. I can just double click on that and it jumps now to that piece of legislation we found. So I don't have to find that ever again. And as well as jumping back and forth between them just by double clicking, I can also drag it into the other window and release it and bring it up side by side. So, you know, once you find something, you can just drop a link, and even as you find something, you leave a little breadcrumb trail behind you, and it means all those things are just there next time you come back to it, which you inevitably will. We've also got paragraph 25 of Schedule 10, which we need. So I'm going to go back into my file where I've got Schedule 10 here. So let's bring Schedule 10 and let's put that also up in my legislation folder. Let's put it there. And let's search for 25 to see if we're as lucky here with 25. You know, we can jump, oh, there we go. Hit enter a couple of times, and we can find paragraph 25 and copy and paste that in there. So now we've got a bookmark for our two passages. Let's drop a cross-reference there too. Again, so we've got those two, the Part 4 reference and the Schedule 10 reference. Here, we can jump to that one, and then we can jump to that one as well, because this is going to be the relevant part for us. So I'm beginning to now have a clue what I'm talking about. I might want to bring in some new law. I'll just point out one thing I could do as well in this case, which is I happen to, as you may have noticed, this is an STLT matter. And I do a fair amount of STLT. And so what I have here is a Casedo file I made earlier, which I use quite a lot. And inside this, if I import, what I'm going to do now is not open the Casedo file, which would replace all this. I'm going to import it into Casedo. And you'll see, as I do this, what I get is a folder in my desk space, which has my index and my desk space. And actually, all I've got is one folder in this Casedo project, and it's the legislation. But inside there, you'll see I've got all the STLT legislation. It's quite a lot of it. I've got the main Part 4, which is this one, and you can see we've got Part 45 in there as well, which is, as you'll see, looks the same. But I've also got all the schedules for the various bits and pieces that you can use for STLT. For now, I think that's a bit much for the purposes of this webinar, but I'm going to delete it. But it's a good example how when you're dealing with a matter multiple times, it can be quite useful to sort of save your work, save a copy of the bits you can reuse each time. Because that can be very powerful. So now every time, for example, I get an STLT matter, I just bring in all that law and it's there in one piece, and I don't then have to find all the particular files and find the particular sections, because it tends to be the same ones each time. Anyway, where were we? Yes, you can carry on like this as you go. I mean, so for example, we could bring in some. Where were we? We have some. We want to bring in some case law. It's the same idea. Let's say a case or two, and I find again, I almost always have a folder for cases, and I might put that there. But I tend to sometimes, in fact, create an authorities folder, so I join these together, because in Casedo you can very easily create subfolders by putting one folder inside the other. That can be helpful sometimes if you want to keep things even tidier. But now we've got some cases, etc. And again, I mean, how you deal with a case is really up to you. I mean, I would tend to, for example, drop a bookmark on the held passage and tend to highlight the relevant bits that I like or don't like. And I tend to put a bookmark on the beginning of a judgment itself, with the name of the judge. And this is also that when I glance at this case, I can get a real sense of what's going on. Now, I might want to put But I always try and use paragraph numbers. I'll appeal that and drop that in like that. And then the key section will be. And then maybe, maybe this bit, the passage. And you can see, as you work through a case and you read it, this is going to be, it's going to build something sensible here. Again, you may give this a color. That I won't explain my color conventions now, but that by sort of, as you read a case, putting this markup on is really helpful and allows you to sort of make sense of your cases. Again, in other cases, you might simply just say, find the relevant passage and we want the rule, whatever it is, typing about it. So there we go, and you can again see how you can easily bring this all together, which means you can be comparing your legislation next to your case law and reading them side by side. You can be reading your case law whilst and referring back to your decision and jumping between those two things. And you could get a sense here of how this bundle is allowing me to delve deep into the meaning of all I've been sent and really understand what the law is and how I should advise my client. There's no need to stop there. I often find myself importing useful things such as practical law resources that come across an area that's not key to my existing knowledge. I might create a folder for practical law, quite useful. Here we've got some of these notes, and these of course all link off to the internet. So if I were to click on any of these links, I'm going to be taken straight to the internet to further resources if I need them. So that can be useful. And I'll add bookmarks and notes, etc. as I go. Just realized I haven't shown you. I've shown you the bookmarks tab in the top left and the links tab in the top right. I haven't shown you the comments tab in the bottom right. So I could drag that onto the page. You see this tab, I just drag it onto the page and type in 30 days to appeal or whatever it is that I want to say into that comment. So I can add a comment very easily. So that's really what I wanted to show you today. How simple it is to pull stuff together in Casedo like this, and what this means. Next time I could do this initial thing, whack off an email to my client, replying to myself here and saying, "Oh, I think you've got reasonable chances. Whatever. Let me know if you want to instruct me." And whatever it is I'm saying, do you want me to draft the claim? And then I may not hear anything of this for a few weeks or longer. But next time I do, I have to open up a single file. I'll go to my recent cases list and open up a single file. And this would open up exactly as you see it now. And I'll be able to jump straight back and, okay, so this is the decision I'm appealing, etc., etc. And this is the law. These are the provisions I looked at before. These are the cases I read, remind myself of the key passages, etc. So a really good resource for quickly picking up where you left off. It's great when clients ring you, and by the time you said hi, I remember who they are. You've loaded up your Casedo file for their case, and you're bang on top of all the documents, got them all in front of you. You can jump to the important bits right away. It's really good for looking at. A number of users say how good it makes them look on a client call because they're so everywhere. The other thing I'm going to just before sign up, I want to show you the table of contents feature, which is I love. Here, this button here, hit the table of contents and create a table of contents. You can see at the moment it's empty. That's because it's in the desk space. If I pop it up here at the top and we look at it, we generate it, it's going to give me a list of everything in my bundle. That's not particularly useful. You've got that here, but in the top right hand corner, we can choose to add more information to this. So I can add, for example, if I want to see the comments I added, I can say, oh, look, there's my comment. I say I only added one comment in this bundle. There we go. I could rename this comments. And I can say, okay, that's useful for comments. I'm going to add another one for highlights. I'm going to pop that up there. And I'm going to, in this one, I'm going to turn on highlights. And that's going to show me a list of all the highlights I put under every document. Obviously, you can do more than one. I could turn on comments on this as well. And also you can turn on bookmarks, which is quite useful. So then you see under the bookmarks, you can see the highlights the passage you highlighted for each document. A really quick way of reviewing what did I think was so important in these cases, for example. And in fact, I'll notice you can even pop that inside, say, the cases folder if you want them, just for that, and regenerate it. And now it's just going to show me the highlights on my cases. Maybe add comments in as well, etc., etc. So you've got a lot of flexibility. These are great little tools for bringing together your annotations. If you find yourself using something. Anyway, I will stop there because this was supposed to be a short webinar. Hopefully, I wasn't moving too fast there. Hopefully, it all makes sense. If it doesn't, get in touch with me at ross@casedo.com. If it does, download the software and start using it, because as I said to so many people, the only way to really get a sense of how powerful and efficient this is for what we do as barristers is to use it in anger on a case. So pick a matter, something, ideally you're not going to end up in front of a judge but too quickly, and then you'll have an opportunity to experiment with this for yourself and really see how those tools I've just been showing you now can make you faster, quicker, and better.